ever thought about who our great so many greats ago grandparents might be? Us Homo sapiens. That's Latin for wise men, by the way. Might like to think of ourselves as the headliners in the human evolution concert, but truth be told, we're actually the 9th act to take the stage. Our predecessors, 8 other species of humans, lived long before we stepped in. Some of these people had a longer time here on the planet than we've managed so far, even though we're the ones who usually take the historical spotlight. So, care for a family reunion? Let me introduce you to the relatives you never knew you had. Most scientists concur that around 6 million years ago, a group of primates took a bold evolutionary leap and started to walk on 2 legs, inaugurating the Homo genus. They traded their ape-like long arms for sturdy legs and started exploring new horizons beyond the forests. They weren't tree swingers anymore, they were upright walkers. As time went by, their brains grew and they became skilled hunters, masters of fire, and builders of shelters. They even began expressing themselves through symbolic acts. By the time Homo sapiens emerged about 300,000 years ago, we were the 9th species of the Homo genus. Prior to us, several other varieties of humans thrived. Prepare yourself for a bit of a tongue twister. Homo habilis, erectus, rudolfensis, heidelbergensis, floriensis, neanderthalensis, naledi, and luzonensis. Now that we've established who's who, let's delve into the fascinating histories and lifestyles of our ancestral species. First off, let's talk about Homo habilis, or the handyman. Between 2.4 and 1.4 million years ago is when these resourceful creatures walked the Earth. Scientists, upon uncovering fossilized remains of these early humans in Tanzania, noticed that they had slightly more substantial brains than apes. Additionally, when they unearthed thousands of stone tools in close proximity, they agreed that these humans were particularly good at tool crafting, earning them the handyman nickname. Despite their nature, one considerably shorter and their weight less than the average modern human, they managed to hunt animals with stone tools, indicating complex thinking. Following them, the Homo erectus group were the first to attain fully upright postures. Hence the name erectus, which means upright person. Their arms were shorter when compared to their bodies and their legs longer, a physique optimized for walking and running rather than tree climbing. These individuals had a larger brain than apes, but smaller teeth. The remnants of campfires and fireplaces that scientists have uncovered suggest that these humans were likely the first to cook their food. This practice, especially when talking about meat, enabled them to grow taller and develop larger brains. These humans existed for almost 9 times longer than our current state, by the way. Our subsequent ancestor, Homo rudolfensis, was here between 1.9 and 1.8 million years ago. Sadly, we don't know much about them. They were unearthed near Lake Rudolph, now Lake Turkana, in Kenya, and possessed a larger head than Homo habilis. However, some scientists believe that they might bear a closer relationship to a different primate species, given their smaller stature. Homo heidelbergensis were small, broad humans, believed to be the first to occupy colder climates. Scientists believe that these early humans hunted big animals like horses, elephants, hippos, and rhinos using spears. They also mastered the control of fire and the construction of basic shelters from wood and stone to keep them warm. It's widely accepted that the African lineage of Homo heidelbergensis eventually led to the emergence of our species, Homo sapiens. Next, meet Homo floresiensis, affectionately known as the hobbit, due to its diminutive stature. These petite humans inhabited the Indonesian island of Flores. Scientists have discovered remains of dwarf elephants and Komodo dragons alongside these humans, implying an island existence filled with distinctive traits and adaptations. Then we have Homo neanderthalensis, or the Neanderthals, our nearest relatives. These humans, last sighted on Earth around 40,000 years ago, were shorter and more robust than us, but had brains as large, if not larger. In harsh, chilly conditions, Neanderthals were skilled at igniting fires, building elaborate shelters, and fashioning clothes using intricate tools, like bone needles. Neanderthals also used to bury those that had passed, which shows they had symbolic thought and a sophisticated culture. It might even suggest they had some sort of language skills. Homo naledi, a species discovered recently, survived until about 236,000 years ago. Despite numerous fossil samples being available, we know very little about Homo naledi, including their exact size or lifestyle, as no tools or other animals were found alongside the fossils. Finally, we have Homo luzonensis, discovered in 2019 in a confined cave on an island in northern Indonesia. This finding reopened discussions about how these early humans reached such distant islands, and whether Homo luzonensis is a distinct species or a variant of Homo floresiensis. As we navigated our ancestral tree, we can clearly see that not all of these human species cohabitated with us. Some, like the Neanderthals, did cross paths with modern humans, and perhaps not always amicably. It's believed that as Homo sapiens migrated into Europe, the Neanderthal population started to decline. We might have been rivals for resources, and sadly, for the Neanderthals, we eventually won. Another theory for the disappearance of the Neanderthals links their demise to changes in their climate. Homo sapiens may have simply been better at adapting to harsher conditions. That's not to say we didn't have some interactions with these distant relatives. Scientists have detected Neanderthal DNA within our own genetic material, indicating that crossbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals happened. The evolution of the human species is an amazing canvas of experimentation and failure, triumph and extinction. While we Homo sapiens may feel pretty good about our accomplishments, we should acknowledge the extensive work of our ancestors who played a part in molding us into the beings we are today. We may never truly know why we're the only surviving human species on Earth. Sure, we can romanticize. We can believe it's because we have the ability to enjoy music, invent calculus, and produce art. The fact that we can engage in complex language must have been helpful too. This puzzle leads us down an even trickier path. Since we can't pin down what exactly being a Homo sapien means, are we really that special? Also, it's important to remember that we're not at the inevitable top of human evolution. Sure, we're one species among many humans, but hey, we eventually overtook all others. But can't you picture a different evolutionary journey? Try to imagine what series of genetic mutations and historical occurrences would have led Neanderthal scientists to study our peculiar, round skulls, trying to decipher our level of humanness. See, evolution is a messy business. Species morph gradually into others, and every member of a species has their own little quirks. That's what makes evolution possible. But here's the twist. We're both uniquely different and strikingly similar to other animals thanks to evolution's game of chance. Our shared ancestry links us to the animal kingdom, yet our differences make us uniquely human. Even among ourselves, we're a blend of sameness and difference. Sure, we share a common thread with all Homo sapiens. Yet, what makes each human special comes with the unique mix of genes passed down from our families, and even from other types of humans like the Neanderthals. Now, don't get me wrong, we humans are not that varied in some aspects. Homo sapiens have less genetic diversity than, say, bacteria, and our bodies don't have as many different shapes as fish, berries, or dogs do. However, when it comes to our behavior, we're as diverse as it gets. We wear many hats: doctors, mathematicians, actors, teachers, outlaws, singers, you name it. There are countless ways to exist, and each of us has the personal journey of figuring out our own vision of what it means to be human. Guessing what's next for us humans is equally as tricky, but hey, we can make some smart bets. Oddly enough, our best chance at finding answers is by looking at the historical human species. We could grow taller, live longer, be leaner, and get along better, but with tinier brains.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia. The island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then they found a very unusual skeleton. A careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just above the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave, and massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a 3-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. And the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belonged to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbit's height can be explained by such a phenomenon as insular dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, prince's dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarves. So in 2009, the World Eco Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature of people who lived there is associated with poor nutrition. The climate in the region is hot and dry, hence it was impossible to grow crops or breed cattle there. Mostly, they ate turnips and barley. The inhabitants of the village never tasted meat. Only in the 20th century, when roads were built and cars became available, it became possible to bring better food there. Now, about 700 people live in the village and they are all of average height. But small houses made of stone and clay are the proof that dwarves lived there. Such houses are easier to build and heat, but the most important thing is they were invisible to foreign conquerors. The residents hoped that the unique architecture of the place might one day attract more tourists. Thank you for watching. My name is Tom, and see you in the next video where we continue to learn every day together with Brightside. Bye.
One iced frappuccino for me, please, and with a double shot. Now, I suspect this is something you'd never hear if you traveled 100,000 years ago to check out on your super great-great-great-grandparents. First off, you wouldn't hear anything resembling human speech for a simple reason. The early humans developed a capacity for language about 50,000 years ago. So, to talk to your ancestors, you'd need to use some of the oldest forms of human communication, including talking or making sounds, drawing or painting, dancing, acting, and using symbols. For example, if you made some weird noises like grunts or guttural sounds, it would mean you're trying to communicate with your peeps or warn them about something. Another reason why no one would grab iced frappuccino back then is that 100,000 years ago, Earth was going through a serious ice age. Who wants an icy, refreshing drink in the middle of winter? It wasn't quite a full-blown glacial period, but it was definitely way colder than it is now. The sea levels were low and there were glaciers everywhere, which made it super tough for our early human ancestors to get around. Some even kicked the bucket while trying to migrate to other areas, especially up in Northern America and Europe. Back in the day, when humans were still figuring out this whole survival thing, they chowed down on some pretty, fancy stuff. We're talking tartar steak, sashimi, you name it. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. It wasn't an iconic fresh dish, but raw meat. Not a Japanese cuisine staple, but a plain fish. There weren't Michelin restaurants serving fancy dishes and Gordon Ramsay recipes, but prehistoric foodies happily munched on nuts, seeds, and berries. And you know what? Their lifestyle is gaining popularity today. And there's even a so-called paleo diet. Paleo stands for the Paleolithic period. The idea is all about eating like our early human ancestors did. Some scientists believe that our genes haven't quite caught up to the modern diet that came from farming. Thanks to farming, we've got grains, legumes, and dairy galore. But it turns out that these changes in our diet happen faster than our bodies could keep up with it. 100,000 years ago, humans roaming around were basically just like us in terms of looks and DNA, but their houses were far from being modern. Actually, those were just caves. They couldn't even buy a mere bed in IKEA. Scientists in South Africa just discovered what they're calling the world's oldest bed. And no, it's not a fancy mattress with adjustable firmness settings. It's actually made of grass. Archaeologists stumbled upon mats of grass and sedge that were stacked half an inch thick on the floor of a rock shelter. And get this, the bedding is 77,000 years old. That's like 40,000 years older than the previous record holder. The mats were covered with leaves from a tree called the river wild quince, which repels pesky insects. These prehistoric folks were basically having a bed and breakfast situation going on in their cave. But let's be real, living in a cave is pretty gross. Insects, rot, and lice are just a few of the issues. But instead of bouncing to a new spot when things got nasty, these people burned their bedding and made new ones. Yeah, seems like 100,000 years ago, life on Earth was totally wild. Sure, microbes and amphibians were chillin' for billions of years before that, but things were way different back then. So, during a prehistoric trip, you could have bumped into one of the biggest mammoths ever. Yup, the Columbian mammoth was a beast. Standing at 13 feet tall and weighing over 10 tons, it had curved tusks that were even longer than its body, somewhere over 16 feet. These weren't like those woolly mammoths you see in movies with their thick brown fur. The Columbian mammoths didn't need that kind of coat, because they didn't live in the icy regions of Europe and North America. But don't let their lack of fur trick you. These creatures were massive, and could have been a real threat to humans who lived near them, even though they were plant eaters. Another beast you'd stay away from is Toxodon. This land animal had some seriously cool curved teeth that gave it its name. It looked like a rhino, but with some similarities to rodents too. The last one was spotted only 5,000 years ago, and that's pretty recent in the grand scheme of things. Charles Darwin even used the Toxodon as an example to explain evolution and anatomical differences. Some people think it might have been semi-aquatic, but its grass-eating habits suggest otherwise. Not only was the Earth full of cool animals, but it also had a diverse human population. There were all sorts of new species popping up left and right, and they were on the move, looking for a better place to call home than Africa's dry and dusty areas. One of those species was Homo floresiensis, aka the hobbits. These little guys were only about 3 feet tall and hunted for their food using stone tools. They were totally unknown until recently, when scientists found their remains in caves all over the world. Homo erectus were the first humans who actually looked like us. They were total trendsetters, standing upright and all. They were the first to explore outside of Africa and check out other continents. These guys were pretty smart too, making cool tools and even cooking their own food. But unfortunately, they got a little too comfortable and lazy. They didn't keep up with the changing climate and eventually went extinct. It's a shame, really, because while other humans were hustling to improve their tools and survive, Homo erectus just couldn't keep up with the times. Lesson learned: don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Homo sapien Neanderthals were basically our ancient cousins who lived in Europe and Asia. They were pretty smart and used fancy stone tools to hunt and survive. But let's not get too carried away with their intelligence, okay? The media likes to hype them up as geniuses, but there's not a ton of evidence to back that up. Modern people are the only non-extinct human species. You and I are part of the Homo sapiens sapiens subgroup that roamed the Earth 100,000 years ago, too. We were so smart that we even migrated out of Africa to Europe and Asia. Our intelligence was apparent from the very beginning. By the way, the era we're traveling in was called the Stone Age, as back then people learned how to tame stones. That was a tremendously large era that started over 2 million years ago, and it only finished in 3300 BCE. Let's dive into Plombos Cave. It's a super cool spot located in the Plombos Private Nature Reserve on the southern Cape Coast of South Africa. The cave may be small, only around 430 square feet, but it's got a big history. Early modern humans were all about Plombos Cave, visiting repeatedly between 100,000 to 70,000 years ago before a sand dune partially sealed the entrance. Above the sand dune, you'll find material from the later Stone Age. The coolest discovery? 2 pieces of ochre with geometric engravings that were found in 2002, marking one of the earliest signs of symbolic communication among early modern humans. It's about 75,000 years old. And it doesn't stop there. More engraved ochre pieces have been found in later excavations, proving that this type of communication has been around for ages. Plus, they found red lines of ochre drawn on a rock that dates back to 73,000 years ago, showing that painting was also happening back then. Also, in 2008, they discovered a 100,000-year-old ochre processing workshop with a couple of toolkits at Plumbos Cave. These toolkits consisted of 2 abalone shells containing an ochre mixture that was possibly used for painting or other purposes. Our technology has sure made a quantum jump since the first tool ever was invented. But just so you know, it all started with pointed stones in Plumbos Cave. Yeah, probably the reason why you have the internet today is because some prehistoric dude in Plumbos Cave learned how to use pressure flaking and managed to sharpen the very first stone ever. And there were some inventions in between that, but yeah.
Have you heard of Gobekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Gobekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Gobekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Gobekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Gobekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Gobekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Gobekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Gobekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Gobekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Gobekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Gobekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Gobekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Gobekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Here's a young man in a business suit. He's got a secret. He's in the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror, washing his face with cold water to cheer up. There's no one else here besides him, but he's not alone. The guy looks nervous. He slaps his cheeks, looks in the mirror, and says, "Don't worry, we can deal with it. We've been going to this for so long, we will win." He said "we," not because he has a split personality. And no, he's not talking to someone else through a small microphone. He said "we" because he knows a secret. Technically, he's not all human, but a group of billions of living creatures. Him, you, and all the people on Earth aren't really who they think they are. Only 43% of your body is made up of human cells. The remaining 57% are microbes and bacteria. Now this guy is going on stage to tell us this secret. Get on the scales. See the number? Now subtract a little more than half from it. This is your actual weight. Everything else is microscopic organisms. It's hard to believe because, in this case, your body should constantly change its shape, disintegrating into tiny particles. You would see your skin pulsating and continually moving. Fortunately, this doesn't happen for two reasons. Firstly, microbes are tiny. Their movements aren't visible. Secondly, most of this microbial world is in a dark place we can't see. A place without access to oxygen. In our intestines. It's where billions of little creatures are roaming. Feeling kinda crowded, huh? Some of them appeared before we were born, but most were colonists who came with food and water. On your body's surface, all microbes come from the environment. Every corner of your skin is covered with microbes. No matter how you try, it's impossible to get rid of them. There are more microbes than human cells. Our genome consists of about 20,000 genes. The number of microbes genes in the human body is about 2 to 20,000 million. That means that technically, we're not people, but microbes. Fortunately, it's not so bad. The genome of microbes complements our own. Such a model of existence reveals many opportunities for medicine. The human microbiome includes bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms, all of them divided into many species, and each type performs its own functions. Some microbes are responsible for vitamin extraction from food. Others help the breakdown of destructive substances. Another type helps your tummy digest food. A separate group regulates your immune system, protects it against ills, parasites, and viruses. Some control weight. Simply put, microbes make your life better, help your body function, and affect your health. There are microorganisms that provoke many diseases. They impair immunity or affect vital organs. Imagine you know exactly which bacteria are responsible for feeling unwell. Next, you find a way to rid yourself of them. It can be some pill with poison against those microbes. You drink it, and the cure erases all the harmful pests inside your body. A disease might appear because of the lack of beneficial microbes. This is one of the ways doctors heal many people in the world. Now let's say you've determined a group of microbes that help strengthen muscles. Then you find out which trace element helps these bacteria work faster and more efficiently. You add this vitamin to food or just get a pill containing 1 billion of these microbes. As a result, your muscles grow twice as fast. The presence of some microbes or the lack of others can show the state of your entire body. A sample of your microbes can indicate your level of health or the presence of some disease. Any person can improve their body not only with the help of genetic engineering, but with microbial medicine. Studying human microbes is cheaper, more efficient, and faster than expensive, complex gene modifications. This area is just beginning to develop all over the world, but there are already some discoveries. Previously, humanity thought microbes were enemies. We made up many ways to destroy bacteria and viruses. But along with the harmful germs, these cures get rid of the good ones. Now scientists understand that microbes can both take away and save lives, so they started large-scale research on this subject. Let's have a look at a big panda. This animal, with an ample supply of fat under its skin, is omnivorous. It rarely eats meat. Its diet mostly consists of berries and bamboo shoots. But in winter, there's none of this, so pandas feed on bamboo leaves. That food is low-calorie. There's almost no proteins in it. But still, pandas don't lose weight after a cold winter. Recently, scientists found out how pandas do that. It's all thanks to a unique microbiome. Every winter, a lot of unique bacteria are born in their intestines. These microbes extract and synthesize helpful substances from bamboo leaves better than others, and thus preserve the panda's weight. Scientists put these bacteria inside field mice. Small rodents began to gain weight much faster. Hamburgers, cakes, and other heavy foods contain calories and help develop colonies of microbes that contribute to weight. Millions of species of microbes have millions of functions. In theory, each of these functions can be used for the sake of humans. So, imagine you need to lose or gain weight, and you just add these microbes to your lunch. Do you want to sleep better or fight drowsiness? Drink microbes that will affect the production of sleep hormones. Do you want to strengthen the bone tissue? No problem! Bacteria are not only inside our bodies, they're everywhere. Part of the planet is made up of microbes. These tiny organisms are constantly multiplying. Look, there are 1 trillion of them on your keyboard. One bacterium increases in size and splits into 2 bacteria. After a few minutes, these 2 increase and divide again. 4 microorganisms appear. Each of them splits in 2. The colony of bacteria is rapidly growing. With such quick reproduction, one microbe can make 1 ton of offspring in just 24 hours. After 5 days, bacteria will fill all the seas and oceans. They will weigh more than the whole planet. Under ideal conditions, bacteria could take over the whole world. However, this will never happen. There are no such perfect conditions for uncontrolled bacterial growth. The speed they multiply at is equal to the speed of their destruction. Dryness, water, light, high temperature, gases, humidity, all these phenomena help control their population. At the same time, microbes are in charge of most of the chemical reactions on Earth. An old apple on the ground is rotting because of germs and bacteria. Mold forms on bread because of microorganisms. But they don't just exist and affect the condition of any material and other living creatures. An endless battle for survival continues in the world of microorganisms. Giant bacteria absorb smaller ones. Microbes with spikes defeat long microbes. There are also viruses that penetrate bacteria and infect them with their cells. A small ball with a virus can destroy an entire colony of microbes. Viruses multiply and take over more and more territories until they meet strong immune cells on their way. There are also creatures resembling robots. They look like diamonds with mechanical legs. Despite this unusual appearance, they're 100% natural. We call them bacteriophages. They have only one purpose: to destroy all bacteria. Bacteriophages are additional protection of the planet from uncontrolled reproduction of microbes. When some microorganisms multiply, they leave decay waste. This waste is harmful to humans. Bacteriophages fight these microbes and save our lives. The coolest thing is that these defenders don't seek to take over the planet. They only attack bacteria. Every second, billions of microbes battle with billions of bacteriophages on any surface. Sounds like a video game. The crystal-headed jumps on the bacterium and injects the genetic code inside it. This code has separate elements that connect to each other inside the microbe's body and becomes a new bacteriophage. Then it destroys the bacterium from the inside and goes for the next one. Look closely at your fingertip. There's a lot of life there. The strongest survive, the weak disappear. Wash it off, and new bacteria will come along with the water. Wipe your wet finger with a towel, and new germs will jump on you from there. And the battle will begin again. This is just the tip of your finger. Inside your body, some bacteria are fighting for your health against microbes that want to harm you. Some microbes in our intestine can be responsible for a good or bad mood. There are also parasitic bacteria that can affect our brain, the way we think, and our emotions. Some creatures control the behavior of animals and insects. Scientists constantly make discoveries in the world of microorganisms. So, bacteria are the rulers of our world. They appeared long before humans and the first animals, and most likely, they'll remain after us. Think about that. Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid, or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other two, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the two eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower. Lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they're more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans drop the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentists around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fibula, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fabella returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fabella might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork. From hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier. Much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller, because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not. Okay, think about it. We are the only animals on the planet who have a chin. Just as humans. Primates don't have it, and even our close extinct relatives like Neanderthals never had it either. Not by the hair on their chinny-chin-chins. Scientists have a couple of theories on why people have chins. First, it could be there to help us chew food, because that extra bone might mitigate stressful mechanical actions like chewing. But if we really needed that kind of support while chewing, we'd probably have more bones on the inner side of the jaw, somewhere near the tongue instead of beneath the jaw. For example, chimpanzees have an additional bone in their lower jaw placed on the tongueward side, something we don't have. Second, we might have the chin to speak easier. Some scientists claim that extra bone below provides some kind of reinforcement. However, we don't use that much force when speaking. Well, some of us do. Third, some researchers say our chin could be something that measures attractiveness when we seek a partner. Hey, nobody can take it on the chin like us humans. Also, the chin could be a result of our skull getting smaller. This is why our mandibles are not as robust than those of our extinct relatives. As they developed, discovered fire, and started cooking their food, they no longer needed strong jaws because the food wasn't so difficult to chew anymore. Elephants have something similar to our chin, but their so-called chin is there because they have a large lower lip, plus a lack of lower teeth. It's not some type of bony protrusion that we have. So, chin up, kiddo. Stay on the bright side. Meanwhile, our cells are so small that if you could get 10,000 of them together, they could fit on the head of a pin. The human brain has an impressive memory capacity. The brain has around 100 billion neurons. You'd need more than 3,000 years to count all of them, so trust me. If we could store one memory on each neuron, our brain would eventually run out of space, and we'd have limited storage space, like on a USB flash drive or an iPod. So yes, it would be possible for our brain to be full. Not mine. Neurons are linked to each other. Each has 1,000 connections to others. That way our memory capacity is exponentially getting bigger. It's hard to measure it, but it could be millions of gigabytes. If our brain was a digital video recorder, it could record 3 million hours of your favorite shows, and you'd have to leave the television on for over 300 years to do that. Whenever we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. Our brain is always active, and sometimes it's even more active when we sleep than when we're awake. By the way, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. Just one neuron won't generate that much electricity, but all of them together produce enough of it to power a light bulb. Our brain is a wrinkly organ, but if you could open up your head, remove it, and smooth it out, it would lay down flat in the size of an average pillowcase. Whenever an insect lands on your leg, your skin's sensory neurons quickly send a message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back a message for your leg to shake the insect off even faster, at around 200 miles per hour. Our heart beats more than 3 billion times in the average lifetime and pumps over 47 million gallons of blood. Humans have unique fingerprints. So do koalas, chimpanzees, and gorillas. Other than fingerprints, people have a unique tongue print too, and they have a chin. We are the only animals that sleep on their backs. Also, humans are the only creatures that can draw straight lines, and we have a chin. More than 50,000 of your body cells were replaced by new cells in just a few seconds while you were watching this part. Didn't you notice? Yes, our entire body regenerates. But teeth are the only part that can't heal themselves. Left-handed people mostly chew food on the left side of their mouth, while right-handed people do that on the right. And in each case, we move our chins. Our fingers are very sensitive, but lips are even hundreds of times more. Plenty of animals can move their ears to find a sound source around them, but most people can't move their ears at all. Your left lung is around 10% smaller than the right one, because it needs to allow some space for your heart. Also, it can fit in less air. Your lungs have 1,500 miles of airways and more than 300 million alveoli, which could cover approximately 1/4 of a tennis court. Lungs are the only organ in our body that can float on water. Toenails grow around 4 times slower than your fingernails. It happens because we do more things with our hands than our feet, so we cause more trauma to our fingernails. Muscle is a word that was originally a Latin term which means little mouse. When ancient Romans would flex their bicep muscles, it reminded them of a mouse. Heh, my biceps look like little hamsters. Our brain takes and uses more than a quarter of the total oxygen our body receives. Each of us has more microbes than there are stars in our galaxy, trillions and trillions of them. There are billions of bacteria only in our mouth, and over 2,300 types of bacteria in our belly button. Ew! But they're all so tiny that if you could put all the microbes from our body together, they'd weigh as much as your brain, around 3 pounds. There's a high possibility your right hand has different types of microbes than the left one. It happens because they cover our skin from head to toe, and their variety depends on our skin thickness, humidity, temperature, texture, and chemistry, which can change as we use our right and left hand in different ways. There are more microbes than our own human cells in our body, but no worries, they make things like the digestive, immune system, and our brain work properly. Sense of taste is about 10,000 times less sensitive than a sense of smell. The flavor is just a mix of smell and taste perception. Normally, we think we can sense taste, but smell is dominant when it comes to recognizing what we eat. Also, the sense of smell is related to our memories. Particularly, smells can almost immediately bring back memories and trigger some quite strong emotions. How about Grandma's chocolate chip cookies? Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. A normal heart rate of an average adult is 75 beats per minute. When you turn on your favorite song or simply enjoy listening to some music, the heartbeat syncs with the rhythm. Our eyes are compelling, and our vision is so strong we can see the light coming from a candle flame even when it's more than 1.7 miles away. On average, humans have so much fat in our body we could produce 7 bars of soap. Our nails and hair are made of keratin, a material we can find in certain body parts of some other animals. For instance, claws, hooves, horns, wool, fur, feathers, beaks, turtle shells, and porcupine quills. An average lifespan of an eyelash is around 150 days, and then it falls out. The hyoid bone, placed in our throat, is the only bone in our body not attached to other bones. It's also the only jointless bone in our body. Out of 206 bones in our body, 52 are in our feet, 28 in toes only. The smallest bone in our body, the stapes, is in the middle ear. It's only 1/10 of an inch long and is surrounded by other tiny bones inside the ear. They're all so small they could fit on a penny, but also very important, because without them, we wouldn't be able to hear. Our hair helps us hear. Not the one that grows on our head, but our cochlea has approximately 15,000 microscopic hair cells. They sense every movement that gets into the cochlea and catch, then carry the sound right to our auditory nerve. From there, vibrations and movements are sent to the brain, and then we can recognize what's that sound we heard. Our body is made of stardust. Plenty of elements in our body have come through a couple of supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. All this led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were right there after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun. There was a constant process of making the elements inside them, and those giant stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years, even before the Big Bang happened. And yet, we humans stand alone because we have a chin. Ready for a shock? Only about 43% of you is actually you. The rest are your friendly neighbors, microscopic creatures that help you function properly. They mainly live in your gut, but also spread to other parts of your body and never leave it. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. Tomatoes have more genes than humans. Well, the part that's actually us, of course. This shouldn't concern you, though, because it's not the number of genes that matters, but the complexity of their connections. Our brain is actually pretty large, almost as large as a pillowcase. It's squeezed into a relatively small head just because it's very wrinkly. If you could spread it out, you'd see how brainy you are in reality. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens in everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. Working memory is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, navigating in the city, and even trying to copy the moves from a workout video. Our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Your bones become more brittle with age as well, and your spine gets compressed. That's why older people often lose some of their height. In the same way, you're a bit taller in the morning than in the evening because your spinal column gets some rest while you're asleep. This effect is temporary, but the one that comes with age is, unfortunately, permanent. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we could find a way to trick our cells into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Among mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You might object that kangaroos and gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Your skull consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only kept attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Move along. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. Masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why, when a reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than 1/10 of a second. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. A recent research showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. We feel about 80% of the taste of any food thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. You might have a chocolate bar or smoked fish in your mouth. There will be no difference for you. Your sense of smell turns completely off while you're asleep. Your brain just doesn't register any smells. So if you've fallen asleep and then something starts stinking in your house, you won't be bothered in the least. Rover, you bad boy! Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air from dirt. We can accidentally digest small objects, such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. It took him years, though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. When asked if the plane was staying there forever, the guy replied, "No, just passing through." Yeah, I made that up. Speaking of meals, you feel sleepy after a hearty lunch or dinner because of your basic instincts. Your brain thinks, and rightfully so, that when you eat, you're safe. And if you're safe, you can lie down and have some rest before going back to the world so full of dangers. Every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have the same smell. Now, our brain perceives giving presents as a more positive act than receiving them. Humans are social creatures. That's why, when we do something good for others, we feel good ourselves. The brain gives us a reward for acting this way in the form of oxytocin, the happiness hormone. Our eyes are powerful tools, much more so than any camera invented to this day. But still, unfortunately, they can't see the glow coming from our bodies. Yep, we're bioluminescent, just like some deep-sea creatures. The only difference is that our glow is so weak that only very sensitive capturing equipment can actually see it. Oops, time's up, gotta glow.
We have found out quite a lot of things about the past of our planet, but can we figure out its future? And I mean, not guess or predict, but estimate scientifically. Before we move on to assessing the future of our planet, I suggest we define the future of our channel. Please support our work by subscribing and liking. Thank you. Well, experts think we might learn more about the future of Earth with the help of a few long-term factors. Among them, we've got the rate at which the interior of our planet is cooling, the chemistry at Earth's surface, and even the way our planet gravitationally interacts with other objects in the solar system. And don't forget that we humans also cause serious changes to our home planet. For example, take climate engineering and other technologies. Some people even believe that technology might be what will lead humanity to extinction. If it ever happens, the planet will begin to evolve naturally and much more slowly. Experts think that over periods of hundreds of millions of years, certain space invaders can lead to mass extinctions on Earth. I mean, comets and asteroids that might crash into our beautiful blue world at one point in the future. Another threat from space can be a powerful near-Earth supernova. It is a gigantic explosion, the largest in space, and it unleashes enormous amounts of energy. The temperature at the core of a supernova is often 6,000 times higher than that in the Sun's core. It can reach several billion degrees F within microseconds. After that, atoms get crammed together so infinitely close that the squeezed core recoils and the star explodes, creating a superheated shock wave. If a supernova ever occurred around 30 light-years away from Earth, we'd have huge problems. An incredibly powerful blast of radiation would bring a massive influx of high-energy neutrinos. Our planet would be vaporized in just a fraction of a second. Even the shock wave would have enough force to wipe out our oceans and the entire atmosphere of our planet. Another prediction says that while the Sun is orbiting the Milky Way, stray stars may approach our solar system. They can get close enough to have a disastrous influence on our planet. Such an encounter can also lead to comets in the Oort clouds becoming more active. The Oort cloud is a region of space filled with icy celestial bodies orbiting within half a light-year away from the Sun. And if something, for example, a wandering star destabilizes this region, the number of comets reaching the inner solar system and US will likely increase 40-fold. But while scientists can't be sure about asteroid impacts or supernova explosions, they can forecast large-scale geological events. One theory claims that Earth will continue to experience glacial periods for quite some time. Also, the movement of tectonic plates will probably result in the appearance of a new supercontinent. It might happen in 250, 300 million years from now. The changes in the luminosity of the Sun, which will become brighter and brighter, will lead to an increased level of solar radiation reaching Earth. It will eventually cause a drop in the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere around 600 million years from now. If this tendency continues, plant life will disappear from the face of the Earth. Of course, it will also influence animal life, since plants are the base of the animal food chain on our planet. In 10 billion years or so, the luminosity of the Sun will become 10% higher than it is now. It will turn the atmosphere of the planet into a moist greenhouse. The oceans will start to evaporate. In around 2-3 billion years, the planet's magnetic field might stop functioning. 4 billion years from now, a rise in Earth's surface temperature will lead to conditions resembling present-day Venus. By that point, there won't be any life left on the planet. And finally, the Sun will most probably absorb Earth in around 7.5 billion years. It will happen after our star enters its red giant phase and expands way beyond the current orbit of our planet. What occurs when a star depletes its energy reserves? Interestingly, it balloons to a magnitude many times its original dimension. This happens because, as the star's core exhausts its hydrogen supply, it begins to shrink due to its gravitational pull. Yet, hydrogen fusion still persists in its outer layers. As the core shrinks and heats up, the external layers also get warmer, leading to their expansion, enlarging the star's radius. As it expands, the star consumes everything in its path, even possibly its own orbiting planets. Although astronomers have observed stars on the brink of, or just after consuming planets, witnessing this event in action remained elusive. However, a groundbreaking discovery by researchers from various institutions revealed a star in the act of devouring a planet. Astonishingly, this cosmic drama unfolded not in a distant galaxy, but within our very own Milky Way, a mere 12,000 light-years away. And the subscribe and like button is only a few centimeters away. Go ahead and click. Thank you. Astronomers observed an intense flare from a star, whose mass ranges between 0.8 and 1.5 times that of our Sun, located near the Aquila constellation, resembling an eagle. Its brightness skyrocketed to over 100 times its usual within just 10 days, before diminishing rapidly. Intriguingly, this initial fiery burst was succeeded by a cooler, prolonged signal. This unique sequence hints at one possibility. A nearby planet was devoured by the star. Which planet met this fiery end? Experts suggest it might have been a scorching world, weighing anywhere from 1 to 10 times that of Jupiter. Such celestial bodies are often referred to as hot Jupiters. These massive exoplanets, akin to our solar system's Jupiter, complete their orbit around their host stars in less than 10 days. This particular planet had been inching closer to the star over time until it was irresistibly drawn into the star's atmosphere and eventually into its core. This cosmic dining event took place roughly between 10,000 and 15,000 years ago, when the star had been shining for about 10 billion years. Despite its advanced age, the act of engulfing was shockingly swift, like a quick bite. This is in stark contrast to other hot Jupiters, which saw more of a gradual consumption by their stars. It's uncertain to the astronomers if this star has other planets in its orbit, possibly maintaining a safer radius. But even if such planets exist, it could be millennia before they end up on the star's menu. Regardless, with this newfound knowledge, astronomers are keen to spot more of these celestial feasts. One day, our very own planet and a chunk of our solar system will face a similar destiny. Everything familiar will vanish in the blink of an eye, but no need for immediate panic. This event is slated for about 5 billion years from now. That's the estimated timeline for the Sun to exhaust its fuel and swell immensely, consuming the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Should humanity have settled on another celestial body by then, they'd have front-row seats to this cosmic upheaval. The Sun's luminosity would spike dramatically, casting off matter into the cosmos, and potentially even consuming Earth in its fiery dance. This phase of the Sun's life will span about 10 million years. Once the core temperature reaches 100 million K, a helium flash will occur, initiating the thermonuclear fusion process that synthesizes carbon and oxygen from helium. With this newfound energy source, the Sun will shrink in size. After around 110 million years, when the helium reserves deplete, the Sun will undergo a tumultuous expansion of its outer layers, transforming into a red giant once again. This Sun phase will be marked by intense flare-ups, with its luminosity at times exceeding its current level by 5,200 times. This will result from previously untouched helium remnants entering the thermonuclear reaction. The Sun will remain in this state for about 20 million years. The Sun's mass is insufficient for it to end its evolution in a supernova explosion. After traversing the red giant phase, thermal pulsations will cause its outer shell to be stripped away, forming a planetary nebula. At the heart of this nebula, a white dwarf will remain, a remnant of the Sun's core. This object, incredibly hot and dense, will be comparable in size to Earth. Over countless millions and billions of years, our once radiant Sun will cool and dim. This life cycle is typical of low to mid-mass stars.
You wake up with a start, open your eyes and look around. Oh, you're inside your sleeping capsule. Its walls are littered with different buttons and tiny screens. You press one of them, and one of the sliding panels sweeps to the side. You crawl out of your pod and start another regular day on the moon. Or maybe you open your eyes and come up to the window to have a look at the weather outside. Everything seems to be as usual: blue trees, purple sky, and low-hanging yellowish clouds. Great, you won't need your acid rain protection today. Or maybe you'll open your eyes to the dry plains of the Red Planet. You'll eat your 3D printed breakfast and set off on a trip to Olympus Mons, the largest volcano on Mars. You've been planning this climb for ages. Whatever scenario it is, one thing is glaringly clear: you're not living on Earth. Why? There might be a few reasons why people could have abandoned our beautiful green paradise. The sun might have grown too old and started to expand, burning vegetation, boiling the oceans, and leaving Earth uninhabitable. Or it was probably a collision with the Andromeda Galaxy. Yes, the one that is bound to crash into the Milky Way in about 4.5 billion years. It could have been a wandering asteroid, large enough to destroy all kinds of life on our planet. Of course, these days, astronomers have their own ways of spotting such space intruders. But what if their equipment malfunctioned? It would end badly for Earth and Earthlings. A much sadder reason for us to leave our beloved planet would be our own actions and the risks we pose to it. According to statistics, these days, the onslaught of droughts, earthquakes, floods, and epic storms is triple the number from the 1980s and almost 54 times that of 1901. Climate change could lead to water shortages, a severe lack of food, and the submersion of coastal regions. If it all went too far, we'd have to conserve the planet to save at least some of its flora and fauna. Then, it would become a nature reserve the remaining people would sometimes visit. But if not on Earth, where would humanity live? Surprisingly, there are quite a few options. For example, we could dig several feet beneath the surface of the moon and build our bases there. Or the first towns on the moon might be built in craters and covered with protective materials, like plastic reinforced with a net made of titanium and UV-resistant superfiber. The inhabitants would have to access their homes through airlock entrances dug into a mound. Or we could skip the moon altogether and set off towards the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune. Yes, they're much farther from the sun and probably way too cold for us. But on the bright side, these moons are believed to contain vast amounts of water, carbon, and nitrogen. And still, the most likely destination is Mars. Unlike the moon, which has a very, very weak atmosphere that consists of unusual gases, Mars has a bit denser atmosphere, even though it's still about 100 times less dense than the atmosphere of our home planet. In any case, it can offer us some protection against harmful space radiation. Mars also has about 40% of Earth's gravity, which is not that bad. We could probably get used to it with time. Plus, there's water ice on the red planet. The soil there contains enough carbon to grow plants. With time, the planet could be terraformed with the help of water from underground ice or imported from an ice asteroid. We'd use this water to form a thin ocean and maybe even create a breathable atmosphere. Or we could find an exoplanet that has all the resources to support life. An exoplanet is a planet outside our solar system. It would probably be much easier for us to find a world that would be perfect for us, rather than reconstruct the already existing world with its own workings.
This is Earth, 335 million years ago. I wasn't around then, but there's just one supercontinent, Pangaea. See? Let's watch it shift around and fast forward. Okay, here we go. It just split into two huge pieces. Australia goes this way, North and South America go that way. Africa, Asia, Europe, forming, and there we go. The planet as it is today. Let's keep going. I mean, the continents are always on the move. Over time, some of them will crash into each other. Others will break apart. But that'll take about 100 million years. Better put it on super fast forward. 100 years from now, humans keep spitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and the planet's already warmed up a bunch. The world's ocean levels have risen about 4 feet. The Bahamas? They've totally disappeared. 200 years from now, the Earth's population is about 19 billion people. The climate's gotten even warmer. We're packed in like sardines over here. New medical tech makes it possible to live to 180. But why? Fossil fuel reserves of oil and gas? Long gone. Oh, and the continents have drifted over 16 feet. The Voyager 1 space probe's about to enter an asteroid cloud at the edge of the solar system. It's the most distant man-made object in the universe, I guess. 1,000 years from now, thanks to better quality food, humans are now 7 feet tall on average. Technology solved the pollution and fuel shortage problem. Humanity's doing just fine. Robots do all the work, we just play around all day. Ocean levels have crept up another 10 feet. Islands like the Seychelles, Maldives, Galapagos, and many others have gone underwater. Denmark, the Netherlands, Eastern England, Thailand, and Vietnam are only partially underwater. There's been a huge human migration these last 100 years. Fast forward about 5,000 more years, and it's the year 8113. Humanity's getting ready to open the crypt of civilization. It's a hermetically sealed room in Georgia, in the States. Bad Georgia. It was created in 1940, and it's full of about 800 books on microfilm, recordings of famous people's voices. It's also filled with bits of technology from that time, like a toaster, a radio, and a typewriter. Some awesome people created the crypt of civilization in case humans experienced a major catastrophe in the distant future and had to rebuild civilization from scratch. We'd all go back to using typewriters. 15,000 years from now, our planet has changed its tilt, and the Sahara Desert is now a tropical paradise. Years of rain turn the dry desert into a wild jungle. 30,000 years from now, the Voyager 1 space probe has finally left the asteroid cloud at the edge of our solar system. If it doesn't collide with anything, it'll be flying in the dark, wide-open outer space for a very long time. 50,000 years from now, the climate's changing a lot. The temperature on Earth is beginning to drop, and we are approaching the beginning of a new ice age. The radio signal with a special "Hello, all you aliens out there" message sent into space in 1974 has reached its destination. The message contained the human number system and data about our DNA and our solar system. If there was someone on the other end to receive this signal, we might have a response from them. 100,000 years from now, one of the largest known stars in our galaxy, Canis Majoris, explodes with enormous force. The explosion of this supernova can be seen from Earth, even during the day, and the nights are much brighter because of the new strong glow in the night sky. What's new on Earth? Supervolcanoes start erupting all over. These volcanoes spew colossal amounts of lava and ash everywhere. Thick black clouds cover most of the sky. This prevents the sun's rays from reaching the ground, and the temperature on our planet drops even lower. Humans mostly live underground anyway, so it's no big deal. Because the stars are gradually moving in different directions, the usual constellations are starting to change shape. Soon, we'll need to come up with totally new constellation names. 250 years from now. Oh, a new island's on the map. Back in 2021, it was just an underwater volcano somewhere in the Pacific. After thousands of years of spouting out lava, it finally reached the ocean surface and busted out in the cool, fresh air. Not much growing on it yet. Niagara Falls has long since disappeared, and Lake Erie and Lake Ontario have teamed up to form one huge super lake. 300,000 years from now, the triple star system WR104 is about to explode. It's spinning crazy fast, and there's a chance that radiation from the explosion could eventually reach Earth. That would do a lot of damage to all life on our planet. Voyager 1 reaches the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius. Not a very funny star at all, it's really Sirius. It's 8.6 light-years from Earth. 500,000 years from now, Scientists are pretty sure that a huge meteorite could fall to Earth any day now. It might be even the size of 8 football fields. The impact of such a massive meteorite would cause an explosion so powerful that its sound would be heard on every continent. That would be followed by super strong earthquakes and tsunamis higher than the Brightside Empire municipal building tower thingy. Okay, I just made that up, but who knows what we'll be building in the future. 1 million years from now, the rogue star Gliese 710 comes very close to our solar system. We're surrounded by a huge shield of asteroids called the Oort cloud, and the rogue star is beginning to affect the asteroids hanging out in there. It grabs them, spins them around, and throws them toward the center of our solar system. Comets start to fall on our planet all the time, big ones, causing more tsunamis and earthquakes. 10 million years from now, the Red Sea is gradually expanding into the East African Rift. Africa is now divided in two by a new oceanic gulf. The human DNA molecule has completely decomposed. But it's no big deal. We've become totally digital, without any pesky aging problems. The really cool thing is that other animals have evolved a lot and changed ridiculously. Thanks to a simple interface, we're actually able to talk to dolphins, chimps, dogs, and cats. Turns out cats aren't grumpy, they're just busy contemplating life. 25 million years from now. The San Andreas Fault has been crazy recently and has caused the Gulf of California to flood the Central Valley. There's a new sea on the west coast of North America. 50 million years from now, Africa just collided with Eurasia. The Mediterranean Sea is totally gone. There's a new tallest mountain in the world. Its name? Mount Everest, of course. Australia is continuing its journey north. It already collided with Southeast Asia a few million years ago. The few human colonies still left on Mars need to do some serious packing. Phobos, one of Mars' moons, is beginning to orbit at a lower and lower altitude. That's not good. It's about 14 miles wide, so that's going to be unpleasant. 60 million years from now, the Canadian Rocky Mountains have completely eroded. It's just one gigantic flat plain. 80 million years from now, all that remains of Hawaii is one island. All the others have long since gone underwater. But just next door, a whole new chain of Hawaiian islands has emerged. Finally, 100 million years from now, we made it! The Atlantic shrinking down to nothing. The Americas are almost rubbing up against Africa. Africa's already merged with Eurasia. We've got ourselves a supercontinent again. Hello, Pangaea Proxima. All traces of human life are gone or buried deep underground. The movement of the continents has destroyed tunnels, roads, buildings, bridges. Animals and plants now reign supreme on Earth. So, where are all the humans? Well, remember we made the jump to digital about 90 million years ago? Things are still going strong. There are trillions of human minds living on a huge hard drive on a spaceship orbiting Earth. The super low space temperature is good for keeping the drive nice and cool. We have millions of different societies, languages, and cultures just like we had 100 million years ago. The only difference? We're all little ones and zeros in a huge digital universe that we created. And yes, there's still football.
"12 a.m. Young molten Earth collides with another planet called Theia. The moon is formed. From 12 to 4:30 a.m., the planet and atmosphere are morphing. The continents merge to form supercontinents. They break up again. This happens every 400 million years. That's every 2 hours on the clock. At 5:30 a.m., we see the first single-celled organisms starting their life in the ocean. It's 8 a.m. when the first viruses emerge. By 11 a.m., photosynthesizing bacteria have managed to take in enough sun to fill the atmosphere with oxygen. It takes 1 billion years. That's 6 hours on the clock. At 11:35, we have the first snowball Earth. Even the oceans turn to ice. Don't worry, everything will melt by noon. At 1 p.m., we have special cells with internal organs coming to life. 3 hours later, they'll start to divide into 3 groups that will eventually become fungi, like mushrooms. Let's fast forward while these cells go from simple to complex life forms. At 7:20 p.m., something familiar appears: sponges. It's 7:55 and the Earth freezes over again. It melts in 2 minutes. 8 p.m. and look in the ocean. We have the first comb jellies appearing. At around 8:30, the Earth's ozone layer appears. In just 2 minutes, the ocean is filling with plants. By 8:45, life is flourishing in the sea. We now have jellyfish swimming around corals. Starfish are on their way. At 8:52, we can see trails on the ocean floor. Creatures have begun to crawl. It's 9:10 p.m. The sea creatures decide to explore the land. 30 seconds later, different animals and plants emerge. They spread all over the planet in an instant. 9:41. It's time for the first insects. They feed on newly formed plants and trees on land. By 9:45, we have the first four-legged animals appearing in shallow waters. At 10:10 p.m., those four-legged creatures are splitting into groups that will later become mammals, reptiles, birds, and dinosaurs. By 10:30, everything vanishes. Mass extinction takes place. Either a huge asteroid or an enormous volcanic eruption causes it. Only 5% of the species survive. 10:34, and the dinosaurs are finally making an appearance. The first one was the Nyasasaurus, but experts aren't sure if it was the real deal or a relative turning into a dino. 1045 marks another mass extinction. The early dinosaurs survive it and take the opportunity to spread all around the world. In 5 minutes, the Tyrannosaurus will appear. By 11 p.m., we have the first birds appearing in Europe. It's 11:15, and mammals are splitting into their groups. They'll branch out, forming whales, elephants, armadillos, and primates. By 11:17, dinosaurs are reaching their full size. The biggest one ever is the Argentinosaurus. It's the length of 10 school buses and tall enough to peek into a 7th-floor window. It's 11:26 when a giant asteroid smashes into the Earth. Dust flies everywhere. A few seconds later, everything clears up, but the dinosaurs have already disappeared. With the dinosaurs gone, the few mammals left can take over the planet. At 11:30, the primates separate into 2 groups, and one of those will become apes, gorillas, and, sometime later, humans. It's 11:58 p.m. The chimpanzees and bonobos appear. 15 seconds later, the hominin species begins to walk on 2 legs. It's 11:59 and 23 seconds, the time when humans appear in Africa. A second later, they've migrated all over the world. They don't have a language, and they can't use or create tools. That happens at 11:59 and 58 seconds. 2 seconds before the day ends, 100,000 years ago, our complex human species appears.
Traveling back in time now, this used to be hard. We fly past the Middle Ages, the first human civilization, the ancient ancestors of the first humans, the dinosaurs, the first land animals, the ancient sea creatures, and so on to the very beginning of all time. And there it is. This nebula is our solar system. Right now, it's just a cloud of multicolored dust made of hydrogen and helium spinning around. This cloud has begun to shrink and become denser. There's a theory that there were supernova explosions near our nebula. Their shock waves squeezed the nebula from different sides until the center of the cloud became too heavy. The enormous weight presses it, and nuclear chain reactions begin at the very center of this cloud. It heats the cloud and makes it glow. Soon it forms into a dense sphere, and that's how our sun is born. It happened about 4.5 billion years ago. Our planet doesn't exist yet. There's only a disk of dust and space debris orbiting the young sun. These pieces of debris are fusing gradually and getting heavier and heavier. Let's look at the very center of this pile of asteroids. The total weight of the debris compresses the central region so much that a dense metallic core is forming there. The enormous pressure heats the core, and the temperature at the center of the young Earth reaches nearly 10,800 degrees. And there's a liquid core around the solid one. It creates the magnetic field of our planet. Now, when radiation from the sun and the solar wind reaches Earth, it smashes into a shield in the form of our magnetic field. So far, our planet is burning and looks more like a ball of lava. But it begins to cool down, forming a solid crust. At this point, another protoplanet appears on the horizon. It looks more like an asteroid, the size of Mars, and this massive piece of debris flies towards us. It hits the young Earth at such an angle that it knocks a part of our planet outward. The debris itself breaks into several pieces and stops in our orbit. After a while, all of this debris comes together to form the Moon. As a result of this collision, the Earth began rotating too fast. A day now lasts about 5 hours instead of the usual 24. But the Moon is heavy enough to slow our planet's rotation with gravity. Now, the Earth doesn't look like a hospitable place. The gravitational forces of the Moon are penetrating deep into the Earth and causing more volcanic activity. Also, meteorites are constantly falling here, causing frequent explosions on the surface. Ow! The gas that comes out of the volcanoes forms our atmosphere. The ice that was brought to our planet on meteorites evaporates. The vapor rises and turns into rain. This rainwater falls to the surface, cooling the hot lava and forming the first lakes and rivers. For several 100 million more years, Earth resembles the surface of Venus. It's a lifeless place with a bunch of volcanoes, acid rains, and no oxygen to breathe. The sun wasn't as bright as it is now. Plus, the sun's rays could barely pass through tons of volcanic dust in the atmosphere. But about 3.5 billion years ago, the first life appears here in the form of single-celled organisms that didn't need oxygen. They appeared in the shallow, warm parts of the ocean near the shore. These bacteria reigned on Earth for nearly 2 billion years throughout the Archean eon. They left stromatolites. These are stone pillars at the bottom of shallow, warm water. They're the product of simple organisms and bacteria. These bacteria evolved until they learned photosynthesis. Bacteria began to produce oxygen by absorbing the energy of sunlight. At first, this oxygen was spent on oxidizing rocks, but then excess oxygen began to fill the atmosphere. Plus, at this time, the first algae appeared, which also produced oxygen. This event is called the Great Oxidation Event, good name, which caused almost all living organisms to disappear from the face of the Earth. For simple organisms, oxygen was toxic, and the remains of bacteria and microorganisms sank to the bottom of the ocean. Many millions of years later, these remains will be recycled, and under the tremendous pressure of water and the Earth's crust, they will turn into oil. The Archean eon ended with this catastrophe about 2.5 billion years ago. At the same time, continents were forming on Earth, which would later drift through the world's oceans like puzzles and form a supercontinent. But for now, methane and carbon dioxide still make up most of the atmosphere. They cause the greenhouse effect and the rising temperatures on Earth. But the emergence of oxygen stops the greenhouse effect, and the temperature on our planet drops. An ice age, the so-called Huronian glaciation, which lasted from 2.4 to 2.1 billion years ago, begins. Scientists speculate that our planet was almost completely covered in ice at that time, even on the hot equator. A huge change when you consider that 2 billion years ago, our planet was like a ball and lava, but now it's like a block of ice. Earth, during the Huronian glaciation, was more like Jupiter's satellite Europa. There, too, is a thick crust of ice, under which there's a liquid ocean heated by the core. The evolution of the Sun saved our planet. Since its birth 4.5 billion years ago, it's been getting bigger and hotter. So, after 300 million years of an ice age, the Earth began to warm up. But almost all life there had been wiped out, and evolution has to start all over again. About 1 billion years ago, all of the continents of our planet were assembled into one hypothesized supercontinent, Rodinia, and all the oceans made up one colossal ocean of Miravia. 750 million years ago, that continent broke apart and huge chunks of land began drifting across the planet. Complex plants and multicellular organisms appeared just at this time. Algae, sponges, and fungi weren't the only inhabitants of the ocean. This is Sprigina. They're a kind of worms the size of a human finger. We have remains of these animals that are at least about 550 million years old. 541 million years ago, the Phanerozoic eon began. The main event at that time is the Cambrian explosion. Life began to blossom on Earth, and a great variety of living organisms appeared. Mollusks and echinoderms like starfish and sea urchins appeared. Living organisms evolved, having not only an internal but also an external skeleton, like trilobites. Some of these things could reach nearly 3 feet in length. Their protective shells suggest that there were predators in the ocean. A food chain started forming at that time. At the same moment, the drifting continents fused again. This supercontinent has a different shape and is called Pannotia. Later, these continents drifted apart again and began to collide with each other. This led to the formation of mountain ranges. Then the continents met for the last time and formed the giant supercontinent Pangaea about 335 million years ago. Here we can already see the outline of the modern continents of Africa, North and South America, Australia, and Eurasia. One of the largest sea creatures ever, the Dunkleosaurus, appeared. Some individuals could be as long as a school bus and weigh as much as a large SUV. The land had a hot and humid climate. It encouraged ferns and other plants to grow faster. Some of them could reach the height of a 3-story building. And for the first time in Earth's history, some animals leave the ocean and go on lands, such as L. generpeton and Ichthyostega. Anyway, at first, they live only on the coast because their skin wasn't adapted to the constant sunlight. In addition, they experience breathing problems. The first animals on land had both gills and lungs, but the lungs were underdeveloped, so they had to return to the water. Millions of years later, these animals evolved into more advanced amphibians. Though they were no bigger than ordinary lizards, they could already live fully on land. But this blossoming of life ended in a new ice age. Glaciers from the poles slowly crept toward the equator. Animals weren't prepared for this, and most of them didn't survive this extinction event. But 290 million years ago, evolution retook hold and more evolved land animals began to appear. Gradually, they increased in size, multiplied, and gave birth to a new species like Scutosaurus and Gorgonopsis. But this period didn't last long either. Only 40 million years later, as a result of unknown events, 95% of all living organisms on Earth ceased to exist. It could have been caused by a giant meteorite or by increased volcanic activity. Also, one hypothesis says it could have been the release of methane from the bottom of the ocean. The Mesozoic era began after this extinction. This is where the dinosaurs, as we know them, appeared and started a new page in Earth's history. So get this, the Earth acquires 40,000 tons of mass every single year. More and more people are being born, new buildings and structures. You might think that's something that adds mass, but nope, since it's created out of existing matter on the Earth, it's actually dust falling from space to our planet. That dust consists of vestiges coming from our solar system, like space bodies that never managed to form into a planet, or asteroids and meteors that fell apart on their way and now drifting around. Our planet is there like a giant vacuum cleaner that pulls in all those particles of dust powered by gravity. So yes, Earth gains weight, but some calculations also say the entire planet, including the atmosphere and the sea, is losing around 50,000 metric tons of its mass annually. Gases like hydrogen and helium are within our planet's atmosphere, but they're so light gravity can't retain them there. So huge amounts of those gases escape our planet every year. 6 pounds of hydrogen every second. Sounds like a lot, but the Earth is really heavy, so it would take trillions of years for all the hydrogen to escape our atmosphere. Also, the planet's core is like some sort of big nuclear reactor. It runs all the time, so it gradually loses energy, which means it's losing mass too. Our planet is not a perfectly shaped sphere, it's more like a squashed one. As it spins, gravity is directed toward the Earth's center, while a centrifugal force goes outward. Earth has a tilted axis, so centrifugal force doesn't exactly oppose gravity. Also, gravity pushes those extra masses of Earth and water up at the equator into a bulge. Earth also has a waistline, 24,900 miles. You weigh more standing at one of the poles than at the equator. Although, for weight loss, Pluto comes as the best option. A 150-pound person would weigh around 10 pounds there. Avoid Jupiter, the same person would weigh over 350 pounds there. Our planet is all green and blue now, but chances are it used to be purple. Scientists think ancient microbes might have used some other molecule to harness the sunlight instead of chlorophyll that gives plants their green color. That molecule possibly colored the living organisms into a more violet shade. The Earth is electric. Just one stroke of lightning can heat the air to over 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which causes the air to rapidly expand. That same ballooning air makes a shock wave we know as thunder. 6,000 lightning flashes appear all over the planet every minute, and the longest one occurred in the sky above Brazil, 440 miles long. Newer studies found out that the Earth's core is as hot as the Sun's surface, over 9,300 degrees. The driest spot we have is the Atacama Desert of Peru and Chile. The center of Atacama has spots where we've never recorded any rain. The coldest place is naturally Antarctica, where winter temperatures can go down to minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. No thanks. It's also the biggest desert we have on Earth. We imagine deserts as endless, sandy, and insanely hot areas, but there are coastal, subtropical, and polar deserts. They all have wind-swept and barren lands, which makes them very difficult for animals and plants to inhabit. The Pacific Ocean is the Earth's biggest ocean basin, which covers a huge area of almost 80 million square miles. The Pacific contains over half of the free water on our planet, and is so big all of our continents could fit there. Earth used to have 2 moons, or at least that's something scientists believe. That second one was almost 3 times smaller than the one we have today, and may have orbited our planet before it slammed into the bigger one. This clash may be an explanation of why the 2 sides of the moon we're left with is not equal. And there are moonquakes going on. It looks pretty inactive from our perspective, but the ground there is definitely shaking, although less than on Earth. Moonquakes shake at great depths, especially midway between the lunar center and its surface. To get to the longest mountain chain, we have to look way down under the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. It's a chain of volcanoes that goes about 18,000 feet above the bottom and spans over 40,000 miles. We have a magnificent planet, more than 4.5 billion years old, which makes it 10,000 times older than humans. But it's not the same as it was in the beginning. The ground we walk on is recycled. Earth has its cycle. Magma from the depths of our planet comes up and hardens into rocky matter. Tectonic movements brings the rock to the surface where erosion happens. That's a process where wind, water, and other natural forces break apart rock and changes it. The small pieces get buried, deposited, and compacted into sedimentary rocks like sandstone. If these rocks are buried deep enough, they get cooked and transformed into magma. So the whole cycle repeats all over again. We got used to seeing lava and ash coming out of volcanoes, but some of them even produce their own flashes of lightning. In 2020, the Taal volcano, which is around 40 miles away from the Philippines' capital, Manila, started blasting smoke and ash pretty high into the air. Inside its ash column, small pieces were colliding and then producing lightning flashes people could see scattering across the sky. Lakes can go crazy and explode too. Neos, Manoon, and Kivu are 3 lakes that sit above volcanoes. Since there's magma under their surface, there's carbon dioxide released into the lakes, which leads to a deep gas layer above the lake bed. It's pretty rare, but carbon dioxide can suddenly erupt from the lake and form an unpleasant gas cloud, similar to something a volcano does. 70% of our planet's surface is covered in oceans, but we've only explored 5% of them. And around 300 million years ago, I wasn't around then, we only had one massive supercontinent called Pangaea, with one huge sea, Panthalassa. Surprisingly, coral reefs are the biggest living structures. They consist of small coral polyps, but together they make a true community of organisms and a very important part of Earth's ecosystem. Some coral structures can even be seen from space. The Earth's surface is not evenly shaped, which means mass is uneven too. That way, gravity is not the same in all spots on Earth. There's a mysterious anomaly in the Hudson Bay of Canada. The gravity there is lower than in other regions surrounding this area, and scientists believe it's because of melted glaciers. During the last ice age, that region was covered in ice, which is now long gone and melted. But the planet hasn't completely recovered from the icy burden. Gravity over any area is proportional to its mass. The glacier left an imprint that pushed aside a part of the planet's mass, which is one of the reasons why the gravity is weaker in that area. Some bugs get nastier when in space, without gravity. Studies showed some bacteria, like Salmonella, can make worse damage in space because there's something in the lack of gravity that makes them tougher and changes their activity. The days on Earth are slowly getting longer. When the planet was formed, days were about 6 hours long and gradually got longer. 620 million years ago, a day lasted 22 hours. Today, we have 24 hours, but it's increasing by around 1.7 milliseconds every century. This happens because of the Moon. It's slowing down our planet's rotation with the tides it helps create. When the Earth is spinning, tidal ocean bulges are pulled a little bit ahead of the Moon-Earth axis. That makes some sort of force that slows down the rotation of our planet, which is how our days are getting longer, but really slowly. We'll have to stick to our 24-hour schedule for a very, very long time. Earth's core certainly seems to be far away from us, but the distance is not that big, 1,800 miles. That's shorter than Route 66. The strongest earthquake we ever had was in Chile, a magnitude 9.5. If an earthquake ever reached magnitude 12, it could split our planet in half. Also, if there's an earthquake happening, it can hit more than 400 miles under the surface, which is why people on the other side of the planet can literally feel that. Our planet has around 100 million times more individual viruses than there are stars in the universe. Clouds are not some fluffy things whose shapes we sometimes like to watch. They actually help regulate the temperature of Earth. If we could pull out all water droplets in clouds and bring them to the surface, that would cover the planet with a liquid film as thick as a human hair. And yet, such a small amount of water brings enough differences with the weather and climate. Our planet would be 13 degrees hotter if it weren't for clouds. You know, rotation is a funny thing. Not haha funny, but kind of strange. Not only can't you feel it, everything does it. From galaxies to atoms, the universe is taking us for a spin. Strangely, it was more difficult to prove that the Earth is rotating than it was to prove that the Earth is revolving around the Sun. Way back in 1610, Galileo, the father of experimental science, provided the first proof that Earth, and all the other planets, revolve around the Sun. Galileo showed in his telescope that Venus was going through phases like the Moon. The only conclusion possible was that Venus was revolving around the Sun. Case closed. Planets revolve. But it wasn't until 241 years later, March 31, 1851 to be exact, that Leon Foucault proved that Earth was rotating. Foucault installed a giant pendulum from the 220-foot-high ceiling of the Pantheon in Paris. That's a lot of peace. An assembly of scientists and journalists watched as the floor turned beneath the giant pendulum. "The Earth turns," they shouted, mostly in French. Another strange thing about rotation is that although the Earth is rotating at a constant speed, the surface of the Earth is moving at all different speeds at all different latitudes. The same is true for every planet and star. At the equator, the surface of the Earth is moving the fastest at 1,037 miles per hour. That's much faster than the speed of sound, which is a mere 761 miles per hour. Halfway from the equator to the North or South Pole at 45 degrees latitude, the Earth is rotating at 733 miles per hour. Standing at the North or South Pole, it would take you 24 hours just to turn around one time, and that's both boring and cold. One result of these differential rotational speeds of Earth is that it creates belts and bands not only in the atmosphere, but also on the surface of the Earth. Jupiter, of course, is famous for the belts and bands in its clouds caused by the giant planet's rapid rotation of about 28,000 miles per hour. The belts and bands on Earth's surface are somewhat overlooked, but we've got them too. We have white ice at the North and South Poles, and between the two poles, there are alternating belts and bands of dry sandy desert and moist green vegetation. This essential geography can be seen most clearly when we view the Earth rotating in space. Space agencies use the differential rotation of the Earth to their advantage. They launch their rockets as close to the equator as possible. NASA uses Cape Canaveral near the southern tip of Florida. And the ESA, the European Space Agency, uses the Guiana Space Center in French Guiana, South America, almost exactly at the equator. Because the land under a rocket near the equator is rotating at a greater speed, it gives the rocket a boost into space that launch sites near the poles cannot provide. You always want to save fuel, you know. Speaking of Jupiter, as I did about 3 paragraphs ago, the axis of rotation of the big planet is even less inclined than that of the Sun. The Sun is tilted at an angle of around 6 degrees, while Jupiter is only tilted 3 degrees. Jupiter stands almost perfectly upright, which combined with the great speed at which Jupiter is rotating, its entire day is less than 10 hours, it turns Jupiter into a giant gyroscope. Jupiter's gyroscopic stability, combined with its massive gravity, gives stability to the whole solar system. Jupiter prevents chaos factors from disrupting the orbits of the other planets. In other words, without Jupiter rotating like a stable gyroscope, the solar system could never have stayed intact for the billions of years that it has. Exoplanet solar systems are showing signs of chaos in their orbits. They could use a gyroscope like Jupiter to hold them together. Rotation is the real hero here. As for the Sun, its differential rotation has a big effect on its sunspot activity. Sunspots are spots or patches that sometimes appear on the Sun's surface, usually at mid-latitudes in both the northern and southern hemispheres of the Sun. As sunspot activity increases on the Sun, sunspots begin to move closer to the equator. Few sunspots are ever seen near the poles. With differential rotation, the gases at the equator of the Sun are moving faster than the gases at the Sun's poles. This differential motion of the gases twists the magnetic field lines in the Sun, causing them to snap. Sunspots are magnetic eruptions rising through the surface of the Sun, hurling electrified gases far into space and emitting intense ultraviolet radiation, often in the direction of the Earth. Uh-oh. Well, have no fear, Earth's differential rotation protects us. Not only does our Earth rotate differentially on its surface, but also down into its center. Studies of seismic readings of shock waves from earthquakes indicate the metallic core of the Earth is rotating slightly faster than the surface of our planet. Scientists think that the differential rotation of Earth's magnetic core within the slower rotating metallic liquid creates the magnetosphere arising from Earth's poles and extending far out into space. This magnetosphere keeps Earth safe from electrified gases from the Sun. Hurrah for rotation! Far out! Now, the 9.0 megaquake in 2011 off the coast of Japan rearranged the mass of Earth's crust and caused the rotation of Earth to speed up. The day got shorter. Not much shorter, 1.6 millionths of a second, but we are accustomed to seeing the Earth's rotation slowing down. The Earth rotating through the tidal action of the Moon's gravitational effect on the oceans drains kinetic energy from the Earth's rotation, causing the planet to slow down. Each day is becoming longer, about 0.02 of a second longer. Well, I need to adjust my watch. Leap years, we all know, are when we add a day to the calendar every 4 years, on February 29th, to straighten up Earth's yearly rotation around the Sun, taking 365 1/4 days. But leap seconds are added to the clocks every so often to synchronize our clocks with the slowing rotation of the Earth, and allow the Earth to catch up with our clocks, as if the Earth is concerned about our timepieces. 27 leap seconds have been added since 1972. The last leap second was added on December 31st, 2016, and made the clocks read 6:59:60 p.m. Yeah, I didn't notice either. But the Sun's rotation has unexpectedly been speeding up recently. Usually it takes 86,400 seconds for the Earth to rotate, as measured by an array of atomic clocks in different locations on Earth and coordinated by a special service in Paris. Yes, they pay people for that. July 19, 2020 was the shortest day ever recorded, a whopping 1.46 milliseconds less than the usual 86,400. Gadzooks! If this keeps up for another 5 years, they may have to add a negative leap second to synchronize our clocks to Earth's increasing rotation. Computers and satellites won't like to see their clocks read January 1st at 0 o'clock, and they say time can't go backward. At least the Earth hasn't started rotating backward or stopped rotating altogether. That would be catastrophic. Everything would crash forward at whatever differential speed it was rotating on Earth. Yet that appears to be what happened to the planet closest to Earth, Venus. Venus rotates very slowly backward, in retrograde, and that is very unusual. How so, you ask? Well, there are several theories to why Venus rotates in retrograde motion, while all the other planets rotate in prograde or forward motion. Liquids inside a rotating sphere, like a planet, have a lot of inertia. That's why when you take an egg from the fridge, for example, and try to spin it, it won't spin. The liquid inside is just sitting there. Its inertia is resisting your attempt to spin it. However, if finally, after many turns, you manage to get the raw egg to rotate, it's hard to get it to stop spinning. If you do pick it up and put it back down, the egg will start rotating again, because the inertia of the liquid inside it is still going forward. You only stop the shell from spinning. Something like this may have happened to Venus. Wait a minute. Venus? Backspin? Tennis? I think there's a connection here somewhere. We know that on Venus, the planet, one day is longer than 1 year. It takes longer for Venus to slowly rotate around backward one time than it takes Venus to orbit the Sun once. But Venus is slowing down dramatically, and by 6.5 minutes in the last 25 years. If there still is liquid inside Venus and the movement continues, we might see Venus completely stop spinning backward and start rotating forward again. Come on, Venus, let's get with the crowd. This business of retrograde and prograde rotation has got quite a bit of mystery to it. It seems that everything tends to rotate in prograde motion. If you shape your right hand like a ball and stick your thumb up to indicate north, then curl your wrist towards you, that's prograde motion. Your fingers on the left side of your hand are moving towards you. Black holes, solar systems, galaxies, atoms, stars, etc. all seem to rotate prograde, depending on which angle you view them from. Experiments at the Large Hadron Collider indicate that subatomic particles spin toward the left, prograde. It's starting to look as if we may be in a left-handed universe. Then why is it so hard to find a left-handed manual can opener or measuring tape? I don't know. It's a mystery.
Let's cut the Earth in half. You can see all of its layers. Here's the inner core. It's about 40 times hotter than the inside of your oven. That's the mantle, an ocean of hot lava. Here comes the crust of the Earth, the solid surface on which our civilization lives. But if you look up, there are many layers besides the atmosphere and the ozone layer. Scientists recently discovered a strange bubble here, which protects our planet from radiation. And nope, it's not the Earth's magnetic field. This bubble is made of radio waves. Our planet grows like a Christmas tree in the radio spectrum. But we're interested in low-frequency waves, the ones that let us keep in touch with submarines. So, radio waves are like light waves, or regular ocean waves. Look at this one. The distance between the two peaks is the wavelength, and the number of these waves over a period of time is the frequency. For example, there are 10 waves in this interval of 1 second. So, can you guess the frequency of this wave? Yep, it's 10 Hertz. Cell phones use waves with a frequency of 300 to 3000 megahertz. So, add 6 more zeros to that number. But waves of that frequency don't penetrate barriers well. Think of how you lose your cell phone connection when you're driving through a tunnel. That's because there is metal inside. It's a conductive material that weakens the radio waves a lot. Salt water is also a kind of conductor. So, if the submarine is deep enough, the thick layer of water weakens the signal, and we lose communication. To maintain it, we send fewer waves but make them longer. In the same amount of time, the frequency of the short waves will be much higher than the frequency of the long waves. That's why they're called very low frequency waves. But, as it turns out, these waves travel all over the Earth and even into space. This is where things get interesting. The waves collide with particles of radiation from the Sun. We think of the Sun as a friendly giant giving us light and heat, but it actually emits a lot of harmful radiation. Each flare, or the electrical discharge of material on our home star, causes an even greater burst of radiation. These particles fly to our planet, just as radio waves do. They travel 93 million miles from the Sun to Earth in 8 minutes and crash into our bubble, which acts as a shield. Basically, radiation particles from the Sun accumulate in the radiation belts around the Earth. Our planet's magnetic field traps them, and a recently discovered bubble of very low-frequency waves lies right below this radiation belt. It helps us repel some of the harmful emissions. Analysis of old studies confirmed that the radiation belts used to be much lower and closer to Earth. But when our civilization began to use radio actively, our waves raised that belt higher. No one expected such an effect from simple radio waves, but it'll give us a way to protect astronauts in the future. When you're on Earth, its magnetic field keeps you safe from radiation. You can physically see it when charged solar wind particles make the air particles at the poles of our planet glow. This is an aurora. Next time you admire this beauty, know that it's actually the Earth saving you from some extremely harmful rays. But if you're outside the Earth's magnetic field, somewhere in space, I have bad news for you. Nothing protects you there. This is a big problem for astronauts who spend months on the International Space Station. Perhaps scientists will learn to create protective bubbles of very low frequency waves around space stations and spacecraft. The same is true for other planets. We're probably going to colonize Mars. There is no magnetic field there, and nothing can protect you from radiation. But if you create an artificial bubble there, you can reduce the harmful radiation. Another invisible bubble protecting us is the atmosphere. It's like a layer cake or an onion. Each level of the atmosphere has its own properties. The lowest layer that we live in is the troposphere. This layer contains 80% of the weight of all the air on the planet. It's also the main place where water vapor lives. And this is where the machine called weather works. The sun sends rays of energy to the Earth. Our planet's surface reflects them and heats the air in the troposphere. This makes it move and change places with the cold air, so all the wind, cyclones, storms, and tornadoes only happen in the troposphere, up to about 7.5 miles high. That's why commercial planes fly at an altitude of around 6 miles. The wind or other bad weather conditions hardly affect this area, and the air here is not as dense as it is down on Earth. Flying 1 mile above sea level is like moving through a biscuit. It's hard, but at a 6-mile altitude, flying feels like moving through light whipped cream. The plane almost feels no resistance, so it's a win-win. They save fuel and keep the passengers safe. A couple of significant downsides are that it's very cold and you can't breathe there. It's cold because there are very few air molecules to absorb heat from the ground and transfer it to each other. You wouldn't be able to breathe here for the same reason. That's why planes are equipped with oxygen masks, just in case. Let's go a little here. This is the stratosphere. There's even fewer air molecules up here, and that's where the weather probes fly. They're the kind of small balloons with computers people use to predict the weather. This part of the atmosphere also contains the well-known ozone layer. This is our shield against harmful ultraviolet radiation. Ozone is almost the same as oxygen, except it has 3 atoms in it. When harmful ultraviolet rays enter our atmosphere, they crash into the O3 molecule. The ray breaks the molecule into O2 and another oxygen atom. The ray itself is converted into heat, but the ozone regenerates quickly. A single oxygen atom joins the O2, and the ozone molecule is ready to protect us again. It's the invisible shield that protects us from radiation. It gave birth to all life on Earth. As our civilization developed, we started to emit freon gas into the atmosphere. We used to fill our old refrigerators with it. A single chlorine atom would detach from a freon molecule when in the air, and then it would bind a single oxygen atom. Now, the ozone can't regenerate like it used to. Fortunately, we banned the use of such harmful gases, and the ozone layer began to regenerate. Scientists expect it to fully recover in the middle of the 21st century. The stratosphere ends at about 31 miles. The next layer is the mesosphere, the coldest of them all. On average, it's about negative 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 5 times colder than your freezer. This is the layer of the atmosphere where incoming meteors start to ignite because of friction in the air. Then they will eventually burn up completely. The air here is too thin for airplanes or balloons to fly, but it's still too dense for satellites. So, this layer of the atmosphere is not well studied. The next layer extends from 55 miles above sea level to about 500. That's a little more than the distance between Las Vegas and San Francisco. Kármán line is situated in this layer of the atmosphere. This is the boundary between our planet and space. The thermosphere is where all our spacecraft and satellites fly. It's also home to the International Space Station. The temperature rises extremely. The air here is about 10 times hotter than your oven can produce. It's all due to solar activity. But you would never be able to feel this heat. The air molecules that carry the heat here are so small that you would literally float between them. Imagine a giant pool with only 3 drops of water. That's the thermosphere. And the highest layer of our atmosphere is the exosphere. This is the widest layer of our air bubble. Scientists believe its boundaries are about halfway to the Moon at 120,000 miles. This is the point where the pressure of solar radiation begins to exceed the Earth's gravity. It's still part of our atmosphere. This means that astronauts who went on various space missions and have been on the ISS have actually never left the Earth's atmosphere.
There are thousands of satellites flying around Earth. Some are needed to provide communication and GPS. Others monitor the weather and climate changes. In 2009, one of these satellites was circling our planet and scanning the waves reflected from the Earth's surface. The satellite was looking for changes in the emission of carbon dioxide coming from the planet, but it found something else. Something that completely changed the principle of studying the Earth's ecosystem. The source of the wave was utterly unknown. Scientists wanted to know the nature of these waves, so they tuned the satellite's instruments to the desired frequency and looked at the Earth. At that moment, they saw an unknown red glow surrounding our entire planet. In some places, the glow was weak, and while in others, it shone brightly. At first, everyone assumed that it was sunlight reflected from the Earth and produced unknown red particles. However, the analysis showed the glow's source was on our planet, and it never came from the sun's atmosphere. The glow may be the result of humanity, city lights, exhaust fumes, or something else. But again, scientists made a mistake. The brightest red light was radiated from places without humans. There were no traces of modern civilization. It turned out those places were swarming with plants. The brightest waves come from the Amazon jungle, croplands of the Midwestern US, northern evergreen forests, and other green areas. To understand the cause of the planetary red shining, scientists began to restudy plants. Every living tree, leaf, or blade of grass absorbs carbon dioxide and produces oxygen necessary for life. Plants manage to do it thanks to their ability to absorb sunlight. This process is called photosynthesis. New research showed that every plant emits a red glow during photosynthesis. It happens because they don't absorb all the incoming sunlight. They give part of it back in the form of a red glow, and this part is only 1% from all the receiving sunlight. This small amount of red light is impossible to see with the naked eye, but if you look at millions of plants from afar, the wave can be noticed. But still, with the help of special devices, this new photosynthesis process is called chlorophyll fluorescence. This is a hugely important discovery that allows people to monitor the state of nature. Previously, changing the color of trees helped us understand that something was wrong with the forests. For example, if a tree turns yellow, then it's probably not healthy, and we could observe the plant's state through satellites. But there are many exceptions to this method. In autumn, in many regions, almost all trees turn yellow and shed their leaves. But in any case, this monitoring system is not very effective. If we see an unhealthy tree because of its yellow leaves, then it's already too late to cure it. Any change in the red glow allows determining problems with the vegetation before the leaf color changes, and this helps to do something just in time. With the help of satellites, people can now see the problem areas of the planet. Also, the glow helps understand how much carbon dioxide and oxygen trees emit. We can learn about the plant's problem even before it occurs. The glow also comes from seaweed and phytoplankton. More than 50% of the oxygen in the atmosphere comes from oceans. Theoretically, it's possible to scan other planets in search of the red glow, to understand which of them has a habitable atmosphere. The red glow doesn't only come from our planet. In the depths of outer space, through a telescope, you can see the Horsehead Nebula, one of the most beautiful places in the universe. It's located in the constellation Orion. People called it so because of the similarity with the thrown-back head of a horse. This nebula was first discovered in 1888. This huge area of space is illuminated with a rich red color. This beautiful shining is possible because there are many super powerful blue stars inside the nebula. Their energy is absorbed by one of the most common substances in the universe, hydrogen. Hydrogen atoms receive such a strong charge from super powerful stars that they emit red light when they collide with electrons. Just imagine if a super powerful star was burning near our solar system, or if our planet was located in the Horsehead Nebula. Perhaps we wouldn't notice the red glow, so we would live inside this glow. We can observe beautiful multicolored nebulae only from the side, being thousands of light years away from it. Let's go back to our planet. By the way, there's another amazing glow surrounding Earth. It seems to be pulsating. shimmering with different colors, constantly changing its shape. If you look at our planet through special equipment, you will see that it's located inside this pulsating, uneven bubble. The bubble layer is quite thick. It covers the planet at an altitude of 50 to 400 miles above the surface. Even the International Space Station flies inside this globe. Almost all the satellites surrounding the Earth are in the zone too. It's called the ionosphere. It ensures the operation of communication in navigation systems. It helps radio signals and GPS to get to our mobile phones. The ionosphere is a layer of charged particles that separates the upper layers of the atmosphere from pure space. In simple words, this is a sort of an edge of our planet, the boundary between the place where we can breathe and the complete vacuum. Sunlight takes 1 or 2 electrons from the gases around the Earth, so these gases become charged particles. A huge accumulation of these floating particles creates the ionosphere. It's constantly changing its shape and size, as the planet is rotating around its axis and sunlight's falling unevenly. During the day, the ionosphere is always larger than during the night. Because of this, it looks pulsating and moving in different directions. This instability shortens the life of orbiting satellites and often puts them out of action. But it also helps to provide communication. Radio signals and GPS pass through it and reflect from charged particles and fly to our phones and navigation devices. Earth is not only glowing but also pulsating. An unknown pulse is coming from the surface or the depths of the planet. The pulsation repeats every 26 seconds and never stops. At some point, it's similar to a human heart. It's working almost in the center of the chest. Earth's pulse comes from the planet's center, the equator, but the exact location of the source is unknown. In the 1960s, the pulse called microseism was discovered by seismologists in the US. More than 50 years have passed, and scientists around the world still don't know the nature of this phenomenon. It seems as if our planet has a heart hidden inside the crust. According to research, this heart may be located in the southern or equatorial part of the Atlantic Ocean in the Gulf of Guinea called the Bight of Bonny. Every winter, the pulse increases, but then its strength weakens again. Scientists began to explore this place and put forward the theory that the ocean creates the pulse. Waves cross the surface and hit the continental shelf of the planet. This impact deforms the ocean floor. A strike to any flat surface works on the same principle. Hit any plate with a hammer, and you will feel a vibration through the object. The same beats are created by waves hitting the coastline. There are waves all over the world, not only at the equator. So why does microseism occur at the equator? Because in this place, the sun heats our planet the most. Solar energies increases storms and winds, accelerates ocean currents. Also, in 1980, geologists found out that microseism pulsates powerfully during storms when the waves hit the shore stronger. Not all scientists agree with this theory. Some researchers believe the planet is pulsating because of the seismic volcanic activity, and there's one that's located on one of the islands in the Bight of Bonny. The place of pulse origin is close to this volcano, but further observations have shown that microseism can be found in all places of the Gulf of Guinea. Scientists still can't prove any of the hypotheses. 84 million years ago, many modern mammals, birds, insect groups, even the first flowering plants are already there. Dinosaurs are still roaming around. They have around 20 million years left before the asteroid. T-Rex, a fearless hunter, becomes the king of the dinosaurs. And the Earth tilted by 12 degrees. Picture our planet as a chocolate truffle. The shell is hardened, the center is viscous, with semi-solid matter. Its top layer, the crust, consists of tectonic plates that are like puzzles. Continents and oceans come on top of these plates. 84 million years ago, the mantle and the crust started rotating around our planet's outer core, then going back. If you'd been able to see it from space, it would have seemed like the entire planet has tipped over on one side. Today, it would have moved New York City to where Florida is. Let's say our planet is like a spinning top. It whirls perfectly if the weight on the top is evenly distributed. But if you move some of the weight to one side, it makes it tilt. It may have been caused by the moving of the tectonic plates and one of them sinking under another. We might be drinking water older than our solar system. Some scientists think the water we have on Earth may have come from ice specks that were floating in some sort of a space cloud more than 4.5 billion years ago. Lakes aren't always peaceful and relaxing. They can also explode. It happens when there are volcanic gases under the surface that can burst, rise to the surface, and cause big damage. The Earth's rotation is slowly going through time. Every year, the moon gets a little bit of energy from our planet and slowly drifts farther away from it. These two things are making our day longer, but really slowly, around 1.4 milliseconds every 100 years. That means when dinosaurs were around, the day was 23 hours long. Our planet used to be purple. One theory says ancient microbes didn't rely on chlorophyll to absorb the sun, but on different molecules. They absorbed green light and then reflected back a nice purple color. Every time you take a dip in the ocean, remember you're swimming above more than $700 trillion worth of gold. Not on the ocean floor waiting for someone to get it out, but in tiny particles dispersed in the water. The deepest place on our planet is the Mariana Trench, a spot in the Pacific Ocean, 36,201 feet under sea level. But the deepest place that's not covered in the ocean is in Antarctica. Technically, it's hidden below thick and deep layers of ice, goes more than 8,300 feet below sea level. There are 60 tons of dust falling from space to our planet every day. You probably inhale a pretty good amount of this cosmic dust while just going to work. It's dust, small particles from comets, meteorites, and some other space bodies. Dalal, Ethiopia, is the hottest inhabited place on our planet. Between 1960 and 1966, the temperature was 106 degrees Fahrenheit, and even in the wintertime, the temperature goes up to 98 degrees Fahrenheit on average. 8 minutes and 20 seconds. That's the time sunlight needs to travel from the sun to our planet. It's still not that much compared to what it takes for the light to reach Pluto, 5.5 hours. Almost 70% of the fresh water we have in this world is held in ice sheets and glaciers. More than 96% of the total amount of water on Earth is in the oceans. The Earth is like some sort of big magnet. Its inner core is actually a sphere made of solid iron, with liquid iron surrounding it. All those variations and changes in density and temperature create some sort of force, which makes the iron produce electrical currents. They are lined up by the planet's spin, and together, they create a magnetic field. There are many stars in the Milky Way, 100 billion, but way more trees on our planet alone, around 3 trillion. You can tell how old the tree you're looking at is by its rings. They can also tell you more about the conditions of a given year, too. When these rings are thin, there was a drought, while the thick ones say it was a rainy period. Earth is a magical planet where even rocks can walk, at least some of them, in Death Valley, California. They leave trails so you can record the path they've passed. Some of those biggest rocks have left tracks behind up to 1,500 feet long. Smooth-bottomed rocks wander around, while those with rough surfaces tend to leave straight tracks. The world that surrounds us consists of atoms, and they seem to be solid. But 99.99% of them are just empty space. An atom is just a really small nucleus and a cloud of electrons surrounding it. These electrons are particles, but they act like waves. They don't exist in one point but are spread over a range of probabilities and occupy lots of space. Take the empty space in our atoms, and all the humans could fit in a really tight space like the volume of a sugar cube. Australia is slowly shifting north, 2.75 inches per year because of tectonic movements. Australia is one of the top continental tectonic plates that move faster than others. You'd need 400,000 moons to reach the level of brightness the sun has. Sounds a lot at first, but the moon only reflects the light coming from the sun. It doesn't make its own. And even though that's not enough, its brightness depends on the exact angle between the sun, moon, and the Earth. The planet we live on used to have 2 moons, or at least some scientists believe so. They figure the side of the moon that faces the Earth is relatively flat and low, while the other side is way thicker and crustier. The theory says that there used to be the second moon that collided with the thicker side. Some believe there's still a second moon. It could be not a giant space body we see clearly in the sky, but some sort of a small asteroid pulled into the Earth's orbit. Air doesn't mostly consist of oxygen. Almost 78% of it is nitrogen. If you want to see some pretty steep rocks, go to Canada, Ionosphere National Park. It has the biggest vertical drop in Canada. The tallest and the steepest cliff with 105 degrees of overhang and 4,000 feet of rock. A team of 4 American men finally made it to the top in 1985, although there were 30 attempts for that before. It took them 33 days to get up. The Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic are the 4 world's oceans. The 5th is confirmed to be the Southern Ocean. It's not defined by the continents around it, but by its Antarctic current that goes from west to east. Research shows this current was created more than 30 million years ago when South America and Antarctica had separated. This allowed water to flow around the bottom of the ocean without any barriers. Melting glaciers and ice sheets means more water in the oceans. It adds the extra weight of all that liquid pressing down the sea bottom, making it sink. The Earth's surface looks solid and kinda permanent, but every 500 million years, it goes through a process of regeneration. Tectonic plates crash into each other. Continental crust creates pressure on the oceanic crust, and that pressure activates the volcanoes. Through time, all this results in regenerating and replacing a majority of the Earth's surface, just like our body regenerates skin cells, replacing old with new ones. Out of all planets in the solar system, Earth is the only one with the outer crust that's broken up into huge surfaces we call tectonic plates. This is an important process that allows the formation of oceanic trenches and mountains, and also helps with protecting the Earth. When microscopic planets that live in the ocean are gone, they fall down to the bottom. The remnants go back into the interior of our planet and get recycled, and eventually end up in the atmosphere, protecting us from overheating and turning into Venus, the hottest planet in our solar system.
It's there. I finally see it. For the first time in my life, grayish body far away in the sky, hidden behind the clouds, the size of 1/4 of a full moon. It won't be there for long. The last time it was there was 33 years ago, and we'll have to wait for 33 years more to see it again. Telus, the mysterious planet humankind still have so much to learn about. For a long time, Earth was the only planet quietly traveling its circular orbit around the center of our solar system, the Sun. Our solar system was generally a pretty stable place. Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and other planets, they all acted in a predictable way. Always the same orbits. Until some time ago, something unexpected happened. Another planet entered the Earth's orbit. No one knows where exactly it came from, since it wasn't one of the 7 planets from our solar system. We had advanced devices that tracked asteroids, meteorites, and other space bodies, but scientists were still terrified when they saw such a big, round body suddenly coming toward us at a great speed. First, they thought it was a huge asteroid and were afraid it would collide with us. Humankind was prepared for the worst because it was too late to deflect it. But when the huge body came closer, to the distance of 93 million miles, which is the average distance between the Earth and the Sun, it suddenly changed direction. We now know that's the closest it could get to the Earth, with the size similar to our planet. The orbiting body needs to meet 3 criteria to be called a planet. It needs to be a perfect sphere, orbit the Sun, and can't orbit any other body, like another planet. It also needs to have a clear orbit of any protoplanets, planetesimals, or other planetary competitors. Scientists were tracking the orbit of the new planet they later named Telus, which is a Latin word for Earth. When it entered the Earth's orbit, it was like something happened with their gravitational forces, so these 2 planets created a completely new orbit, in the shape of a horseshoe. Planets could be in the same zone around the Sun in such an orbit. That means they don't move in a circle around a star, but each goes along the edge of some sort of track in the shape of a horseshoe with crescents that face each other, like 2 halves of a broken ring. For example, Saturn and its 2 moons, Janus and Epimetheus, they dance around Saturn with the stable horseshoe orbit and travel around 93,000 miles from Saturn, beyond its main rings. The closest they come to each other is 9,300 miles. Nothing occupied our media for years but new mysterious events. It was chaos at first because we didn't know how things would end. No one went to school, work, college. We were all waiting for directions on what to do. People were first very afraid, but later excited when we found out that's a planet similar to Earth, which means we could get new friends. Scientists believe Telus used to share the orbit with some other unknown planet in another solar system. We never had 2 planets sharing the same orbit, but some other solar systems could have it. When two planets share the orbit and get closer, one can kick another from the orbit in the unknown direction or even be pushed into the sun because the gravitational forces of two planets interact. If two gravitations would attract each other, they could start moving towards each other and bam, big collision. Or they could successfully share their orbit, shaping a horseshoe orbit-like path, something that happened with Earth and Telus. It's not the first time it happened to Earth. 4.5 billion years ago, when the solar system existed for only a few tens of millions of years, there was a space object as big as Mars moving towards our planet and slammed into it. The theory says the Earth pulled the debris from that planet into its orbit, and those pieces eventually formed the moon we have today. The collision probably caused resurfacing on the Earth. The oldest rocks we found on our planet are still younger than some meteorites we found. Uranus probably also had a huge collision. Billions of years ago, there was a space object at least twice bigger than the Earth, and it came very close to Uranus, the gas giant. Two bodies collided with the force so powerful it made Uranus shift into its side, but it survived. But it's been rotating on its side, different than any other planet in our solar system ever since then. The early solar system was created because gravity pulled a cloud of gas and dust together. It was a chaotic place where debris was constantly slamming into other planets that were growing and forming at that time. Two planets can hardly share the same exact orbit because they can't remain stable. Quasi-stable orbit maybe, which technically means no order. Everything is unstable. Why we can't be completely relaxed with Telus, even though things look good now. It doesn't mean the collision will happen right away. It can take billions of years before that. There are things called Lagrange points, 5 specific points where the gravitation of some planet and the Sun cancel out. If you consider masses as just one planet and the Sun, all 3 bodies can move in a predictable orbit forever. But out of these 5 points, only 2 are stable. Anything that happens in the other 3 will cause trouble. Also, 2 of them, L4 and L5, are points where asteroids collect. Gas giants have thousands of these, but our planet has only one, the asteroid 3753 Cruinia, and it's in the quasi-stable orbit with our world. It's not going to remain stable forever, but if it was like this, 2 planets can share orbits. Days are a little bit longer now, the year is also longer. We still can't settle for the calendar because the conditions are still changing and the planets are still adjusting to their new orbit. The climate is the same for now, probably similar to one on Telus, since we're in the same disk around the Sun. We discovered it's pretty similar to Earth and has similar conditions, which means we could maybe live there in the future. The planet comes to the closest point every 33 years, and later it's behind the Sun, so we're slowly collecting data about conditions. We were thinking about moving there, but then something exciting happened. We started getting messages from space for the first time. They came by radio frequencies in some unknown language. We're currently trying to decipher their messages and, at the same time, preparing for their first visit. We believe whoever's out there comes in peace. They've come a long way to our solar system. Today is the day we are going to visit Telus for the first time. In fact, the spaceships are going to be there any minute. They went there 9 days ago. Journalists are ready. People are cheering. Cameras are on. We're all waiting. Today, Telus is at the closest point and won't stay there for too long, maybe a couple of days. So we don't have that much time to explore it and see who's there. I hope we'll be able to visit them, make new friends, collaborate, travel to see new places. Till now, we only saw some pictures scientists took from the distance. It seems they have lots of water. Researchers believe many waterfalls, lakes, but much deeper and wider than ours. Perhaps hiding some magnificent creature we don't have. They think there could be volcanoes. Maybe we'll find something bigger than Olympus Mons on Mars, which is the biggest volcano we found in our solar system, which is the size of Arizona, a staggering 370 miles across. Maybe it has super strong winds, like Venus, whose winds are 50 times faster than its rotation. Who knows if there's water ice, the matter that exists all over our solar system, some in shadowed craters on the Moon and Mercury. Maybe Telus will change its size, like Mercury, that has Great, so many greats ago grandparents might be? Us Homo sapiens. That's Latin for wise men, by the way. Might like to think of ourselves as the headliners in the human evolution concert, but truth be told, we're actually the 9th act to take the stage. Our predecessors, 8 other species of humans, lived long before we stepped in. Some of these people had a longer time here on the planet than we've managed so far, even though we're the ones who usually take the historical spotlight. So, care for a family reunion? Let me introduce you to the relatives you never knew you had. Most scientists concur that around 6 million years ago, a group of primates took a bold evolutionary leap and started to walk on two legs, inaugurating the Homo genus. They traded their ape-like long arms for sturdy legs and started exploring new horizons beyond the forests. They weren't tree swingers anymore, they were upright walkers. As time went by, their brains grew and they became skilled hunters, masters of fire, and builders of shelters. They even began expressing themselves through symbolic acts. By the time Homo sapiens emerged about 300,000 years ago, we were the 9th species of the Homo genus. Prior to us, several other varieties of humans thrived. Prepare yourself for a bit of a tongue twister. Homo habilis, erectus, rudolfensis, heidelbergensis, floriensis, neanderthalensis, naledi, and luzonensis. Now that we've established who's who, let's delve into the fascinating histories and lifestyles of our ancestral species. First off, let's talk about Homo habilis, or the handyman. Between 2.4 and 1.4 million years ago is when these resourceful creatures walked the Earth. Scientists, upon uncovering fossilized remains of these early humans in Tanzania, noticed that they had slightly more substantial brains than apes. Additionally, when they unearthed thousands of stone tools in close proximity, they agreed that these humans were particularly good at tool crafting, earning them the handyman nickname. Despite their nature, one considerably shorter and their weight less than the average modern human, they managed to hunt animals with stone tools, indicating complex thinking. Following them, the Homo erectus group were the first to attain fully upright postures. Hence the name erectus, which means upright person. Their arms were shorter when compared to their bodies and their legs longer, a physique optimized for walking and running rather than tree climbing. These individuals had a larger brain than apes, but smaller teeth. The remnants of campfires and fireplaces that scientists have uncovered suggest that these humans were likely the first to cook their food. This practice, especially when talking about meat, enabled them to grow taller and develop larger brains. These humans existed for almost 9 times longer than our current state, by the way. Our subsequent ancestor, Homo rudolfensis, was here between 1.9 and 1.8 million years ago. Sadly, we don't know much about them. They were unearthed near Lake Rudolph, now Lake Turkana, in Kenya, and possessed a larger head than Homo habilis. However, some scientists believe that they might bear a closer relationship to a different primate species, given their smaller stature. Homo heidelbergensis were small, broad humans, believed to be the first to occupy colder climates. Scientists believe that these early humans hunted big animals like horses, elephants, hippos, and rhinos using spears. They also mastered the control of fire and the construction of basic shelters from wood and stone to keep them warm. It's widely accepted that the African lineage of Homo heidelbergensis eventually led to the emergence of our species, Homo sapiens. Next, meet Homo floresiensis, affectionately known as the hobbit, due to its diminutive stature. These petite humans inhabited the Indonesian island of Flores. Scientists have discovered remains of dwarf elephants and Komodo dragons alongside these humans, implying an island existence filled with distinctive traits and adaptations. Then we have Homo neanderthalensis, or the Neanderthals, our nearest relatives. These humans, last sighted on Earth around 40,000 years ago, were shorter and more robust than us, but had brains as large, if not larger. In harsh, chilly conditions, Neanderthals were skilled at igniting fires, building elaborate shelters, and fashioning clothes using intricate tools, like bone needles. Neanderthals also used to bury those that had passed, which shows they had symbolic thoughts and a sophisticated culture. It might even suggest they had some sort of language skills. Homo naledi, a species discovered recently, survived until about 236,000 years ago. Despite numerous fossil samples being available, we know very little about Homo naledi, including their exact size or lifestyle, as no tools or other animals were found alongside the fossils. Finally, we have Homo luzonensis, discovered in 2019 in a confined cave on an island in northern Indonesia. This finding reopened discussions about how these early humans reached such distant islands and whether Homo luzonensis is a distinct species or a variant of Homo floresiensis. As we navigated our ancestral tree, we can clearly see that not all of these human species cohabitated with us. Some, like the Neanderthals, did cross paths with modern humans, and perhaps not always amicably. It's believed that as Homo sapiens migrated into Europe, the Neanderthal population started to decline. We might have been rivals for resources, and sadly, for the Neanderthals, we eventually won. Another theory for the disappearance of the Neanderthals links their demise to changes in their climate. Homo sapiens may have simply been better at adapting to harsher conditions. That's not to say we didn't have some interactions with these distant relatives. Scientists have detected Neanderthal DNA within our own genetic material, indicating that crossbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals happened. The evolution of the human species is an amazing canvas of experimentation and failure, triumph and extinction. While we Homo sapiens may feel pretty good about our accomplishments, we should acknowledge the extensive work of our ancestors who played a part in molding us into the beings we are today. We may never truly know why we're the only surviving human species on Earth. Sure, we can romanticize. We can believe it's because we have the ability to enjoy music, invent calculus, and produce art. The fact that we can engage in complex language must have been helpful too. This puzzle leads us down an even trickier path. Since we can't pin down what exactly being a Homo sapien means, are we really that special? Also, it's important to remember that we're not at the inevitable top of human evolution. Sure, we're one species among many humans, but hey, we eventually overtook all others. But can't you picture a different evolutionary journey? Try to imagine what series of genetic mutations and historical occurrences would have led Neanderthal scientists to study our peculiar, round skulls, trying to decipher our level of humanness. See, evolution is a messy business. Species morph gradually into others, and every member of a species has their own little quirks. That's what makes evolution possible. But here's the twist. We're both uniquely different and strikingly similar to other animals thanks to evolution's game of chance. Our shared ancestry links us to the animal kingdom, yet our differences make us uniquely human. Even among ourselves, we're a blend of sameness and difference. Sure, we share a common thread with all Homo sapiens. Yet, what makes each human special comes with the unique mix of genes passed down from our families, and even from other types of humans like the Neanderthals. Now, don't get me wrong, we humans are not that varied in some aspects. Homo sapiens have less genetic diversity than, say, bacteria, and our bodies don't have as many different shapes as fish, berries, or dogs do. However, when it comes to our behavior, we're as diverse as it gets. We wear many hats: doctors, mathematicians, actors, teachers, outlaws, singers, you name it. There are countless ways to exist, and each of us has the personal journey of figuring out our own vision of what it means to be human. Guessing what's next for us humans is equally as tricky, but hey, we can make some smart bets. Oddly enough, our best chance at finding answers is by looking at the historical human species. We could grow taller, live longer, be leaner, and get along better, but with tinier brains.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia, the island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then they found a very unusual skeleton. A careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just about the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave. And massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a 3-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. And the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belonged to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbit's height can be explained by such a phenomenon as insular dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, the gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, prince's dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarves. So in 2009, the World Eco Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature